Hi, how are you doing? I'm doing great because today I'm here with my January wrap up, and actually I'm really excited to talk about all the books that I read this month. So let's just immediately get into things with these stats. I read 15 books this month, which I'm proud of. It amounts to 5,338 pages read, which is an average of 355.86 pages per book and an average of 172.19 pages per day. For format, I read 3 books that I owned, 3 ebooks, 8 galleys from NetGalley, and 1 a library book. For rating, this is one part that I'm less proud of. We have 1 1 star, 3 2 stars, 4 3 stars, 7 4 stars, which amounts to an average rating of 3.13. Yes, you heard that right. I do not have a 5 star yet. That's criminal. Who let that happen? Then for age range, I read 8 young adult novels and 7 adult books. And for genre, we have 5 contemporaries, 1 mystery thriller, 6 fantasies, 2 paranormal books, and 1 non-fiction. So yeah, let's immediately dive into things with the first book that I read this month, being Yellowface by Kuang, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. After absolutely adoring Babel last month, I wanted to check out more about Kuang, and Yellowface was a first on the list because I've heard so many great things about this book. It's also on like a shorter side compared to other novels, so I thought it'd be a great next step with her books. And I generally really like this book. The characters in this book are extremely unlikable. Like, I don't think there's a single character in this book that I would call a good person, and our main character is amongst the worst of them all, but still I find it such a compelling read, and I could not stop reading because I wanted to learn what was going to happen next and figure out what was really happening. I also think this book has some great commentary on the publishing industry and just like on trolling online and racism and stuff like that. I thought all of those things were really well executed. The only thing which kind of kept me from giving a 5 star to this book is that I felt like the ending was a bit of a letdown for me. I just think it was very abrupt and at like the height of the tension, and I wanted a little bit more from it, and it just kind of fell flat on its face for me a little bit. Then next I read The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to the Gallica from NetGalley. This is another one that has a bunch of unlikable main characters. It's not necessarily as bad as in Yellowface, but you definitely still, like, these aren't like the best people you'll ever find, but they are a bit more likable. But I thought this was a really fun read. The start is a bit slow, but it is compelling and interesting enough to keep reading, and then the second half gets over the rails batshit crazy. So I didn't understand why this book has been getting such mixed reactions over the year or so that's been out, because like, it's your vibe or it's not. And for me, it was my vibe. I was not in love with it because, like I said, the beginning was just a little bit too slow for me, but I actually had a lot of fun reading this. I liked the cast of characters. I ended up rooting for characters that I shouldn't be rooting for just because they were very compelling characters. I liked the story. It took a lot of twists and turns I didn't see it coming, and if you don't mind an unhinged time, you'll definitely also enjoy this book. Then next I read The Fiery Heart by Richelle Mead, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to. This is the 4th book in the Bloodline series, which I've been slowly making my way through, and this one I didn't really like as much. It's kind of felt like a filler book. The things that are happening in this book are interesting, it's just that not a whole lot happens in this book. It is mainly focused on the romance, which, you know, I was a big fan of the romance, but just the way things progressed in here, just some parts gave me the ick a little bit, and I just wish that had happened. Like, I'm not fully against the romance, I've not turned cams, but I don't know, I'm a bit more hesitant about it. And because there was so little plot, I was bored throughout a bunch of time reading this book. Then next I read The Witch and the Vampire by Francesca Flores, which I give 1 out of 5 stars to, and as a guy from Galley, yes, I did not get a 5 star this month, but I did have a 1 star this early on in the year, which sucks. But I just wasn't a big fan of this book. I think it had a very interesting premise, which is why I picked it up. Also, the cover is gorgeous. I do still think that the whole setup of this book is very interesting, but it just that at every single twist and turn, this author decided to take the route most traveled, as in the most boring, most bland, most generic, most predictable option she could have gone with, which made for just like not a great read. On top of that, I also think the characters were extremely underdeveloped, and the romance wasn't even attempted to be developed. It was just not good. And then next I read Payback's Witch by Lana Harper, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to. This is just not for me. I totally understand why people would love this. I like the story in this. I think it's very interesting, it's very fun. I like the small town setting. The romance was also kind of cute, and the main characters were engaging enough. I just, with this book, it just did not work for me. Just something about it did not click, and I just was not super engaged while reading this book. Then next I read Mr. and Mrs. Witch by Gwenda, which I give 5 stars to Nageli from Nageli. This is a Mr. and Mrs. Smith retelling, but with witches and a witch hunter. And I felt fine about this. This was a really fun read. It's very action packed. The romance is cute. The characters are fun. The side characters are a lot of fun. Like, I actually want a spin-off romance for this one because I really love the side characters and I want to see more of them. I like the plot of it. I thought it was fun. It's just that it's very run of the mill in a way. Like, it's a fun time while you're reading it, but it's not a book that's gonna stick in my mind for a very long time. Then next I read Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to, and this is a reread. I actually read this book a couple of years ago. I read the first 3 books within the series and I just kind of quit. I wasn't having a great time with it, but I was planning on continuing on with the series, but for some reason that never happened. And then last year I actually read, no, 2 years ago now, I actually think. Oh, now I'm thinking, it was last year or the year before that, but I also semi-recently read The Assassin's Blade to kind of like try and get back into the series. It took some time to get there, but I'm finally here. I reread Throne of Glass, and I just did not like this book, but upon this reread, I did figure out why. I just feel like Selena, our main character, the characters whose perspective we see this entire thing through, does not play an active part in the plot. Like, things just happen, and she has no involvement in them, and therefore it just, it doesn't really feel like a compelling read. Like, I find it really hard to care about what's happening if our main character is not playing a part in it. Like, she's just observing and very passive role in it. But I have to say that I do think the world setup is kind of interesting. I like the cast of characters. Like, Selena, as everyone has said before me, is not the badass assassin as we told she is, but she is not an extremely unlikable main character. And I also like the cast of side characters, so knowing that kind of like the direction the series goes in, because like I said, I've read up to Hair of Fire, so I do know like the direction it goes in a little bit. I am very intrigued to still like keep reading despite not loving this reread. Then next I read A Cursed Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to, and is another reread. This one I actually read way back in the day when this first came out. I actually got a Gallia Virginia back then. I was really excited about it because I was in my Brigid Kemmerer era. Like, I read so many books by her and like ate them up, so I was so excited for the book, and I read it and I gave it 5 stars. And upon this reread, I truly cannot understand why I ever gave it 5 stars. That being said, I really enjoyed my time rereading this. It's just that it felt very average YA fantasy, and considering this was published in 2019, it has no reason to feel like it actually came out in 2013, you know what I mean? I really wasn't the biggest fan of our main character Harper. I just feel like she was very annoying, didn't have any sense of self-preservation, but I do think she goes through a lot of growth in this book. I also really liked a love interest. I'm not in love with him, but I do think he's my favorite character within this book because I think he is very interesting. He's just kind of like a character archetype I love, so obviously I'm also gonna like him. And I liked the chapters from his perspective more than the chapters from Harper's perspective. Then there is a side character named Gray who does get a perspective in the rest of the series, but not yet within this book. And I also really liked him. I think he's a very interesting character, and I think it's a shame we have not gotten a perspective from him yet. Then next I read Love Naturally by Sophie Sullivan, which I give 2 to 5 stars to, and I got from Naggali. This is an opposites attract small town romance, and this is honestly the slowest paced book I've ever read, with the most insta-love romance I've ever read. It was such an odd reading experience. That being said, I do really like the characters. I think the romance is decent enough. Like, I mean, it's very incel, extremely underdeveloped, but they do have a couple of cute moments. I love the cast of side characters. I thought they were really fun. It's always my favorite part of spell type romance is the side characters. And again, this is one that I would love like companion books to, following some of these side characters, and I really hope we get them because I would read them so quickly even if I didn't like this book because I love the side characters so much. And next I read Something More by Jackie Khalilieh, which I gave 4 to 5 stars to the guy from Naggali. I originally requested this because it follows our autistic main character, which I have not read a lot of books that feature that, but recently this book has gotten more popular because it is a Palestinian author, and I've heard so many great things about it, and I remembered that I still had it in my Naggali library, so I thought I'd check it out and read it, and I actually had such a fun time reading this. It's very horny teenage girl and very petty like drama, so if you're not into that, beware. But I honestly had such a fun time reading this book that I honestly did not mind too much. I mean, the horniness at times got a bit much but overall, like I said, I did have a really fun time reading this book. I think the main character is very interesting, not always the most likable, but very realistic and just feels like a teenage girl. I love the friendships in this book as well. I thought the friend group was such an interesting dynamic, and I love following it through the book. And this actually has a great love triangle. Like, I loved the love triangle in this one. I thought it was very realistic, very well executed. I do like how everything turned out, everything played out, and yeah, I highly recommend reading this if you want to have a fun YA read. Then next I read Dungeons and Drama by Kristy, Boyce, which I got 4 to 5 stars to, and I got from Naggali. Another really fun YA romance. This is fake dating, and I just had so much fun. It's so nerdy as well because our female main character, like our main character, is a drama nerd. Like, she loves musical theater, but like she has to go work in her dad's like game shop, and there she kind of like starts getting into D&D as well, which is a massive part of the book, and like her love interest is like a D&D geek, so it's very geeky, it's very nerdy, and it's so much fun. Again, the romance I really like is fake dating, which is a trope I always love, so I really enjoyed how that was executed in this book as well. Again, this is one where the friend group really takes the cake. I really love that element within this book and loved seeing them kind of like nerd out about D&D together. Then next I read Didn't See That Coming by Jessica Sutanto, which I gave 3 to 5 stars to, and as a guy from Naggali. Not a fun YA read. This one I wasn't as in love with as Dungeons and Drama Something More. I just feel like the romance at the center of this one was a bit underdeveloped, and I wanted just a bit more of them like kind of like catching feelings. They went from like friends to I'm in love with you so quickly that it felt abrupt and not real. And on top of that, this book also deals a lot with like sexism and misogyny, and I just feel like at times, as much as I liked that aspect of this book, and I think it's great at how this is being discussed in a kawaii novel, I do think at times it was a bit too heavy-handed and too repetitive, which is why I ended up like maxing is at a 3-star. But I did have a really fun time reading it. It's another really quick read. I like the main character, I like the friend groups again, and I thought the romance was cute, if not a bit underdeveloped. Then next I read A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft, which I gave 4 to 5 stars to the from Naggali. It is a YA fantasy romance, and I really like this one. Again, I just didn't love it, which is like my problem this month, but I really enjoyed this one. As the writing of this just felt very fairy tale like the atmosphere around it just felt like a fairy tale, which was just something I really liked. I think this one does have the angst. This one brings the angst. If you want an angsty romance, that's YA, this is it. But I really liked it. I liked how it was developed. I loved kind of seeing them they have this immediate kind of like connection, and at the start the connection between my character and the love interest is a bit jokey in a way, and like friendly, but like also a bit at a distance. But like throughout the book, as they fall more for each other, they also like form this deeper connection, and they really kind of confide in each other the way that they have not with other people, and they find strength in each other, and all of that was just so beautiful, and I love the way that was done. I also really like the character growth of our main character, like her personal journey. I also thought was really executed. I like the fantasy plot that is like the most generic part of this book though, so there you go. But I do quite like it. It's not necessarily badly done, and I love the world and the magic system. I just thought it was so interesting. Then next I read The Poppy War by I.F. Kuang, which I give 4 to 5 stars to, making my way through I.F. Kuang's backlist. Obviously I really enjoyed this book. my reading experience with this book though is split up in the three parts that this book is also split up in. The first part is very like academic and like in school, and I like that part, that it was interesting, that it was a fun way to kind of like learn more about like the history of this world, what's coming from, like learning about like the magic of the world and stuff like that. It's different from how a lot of adult fantasy books like tend to introduce you to the plot, like to the world, but I thought it was very well executed and I like that part. And the last part, just quickly skipping over to that, I also really liked very high stakes, very high tension. It was on the edge of my seat. It also gets very brutal and descriptive about, because we're in a war at that point, so it gets very descriptive about stuff happening. So if you're a bit squeamish, watch out for that. The way this book ended makes me immediately want to pick up book 2. It's on its way to me. I ordered it, I'm waiting for it, but I'm very, very excited to continue on with this series. It's just that the middle is what kept this from giving a 5-star. I just thought the middle was more like a bridge. If it was a separate book, I would call it a filler book, but like obviously like it's just like a middle, and like there are some interesting things that's happening here. I get why it was included, but I get why it's done that way, because that's just the way you need to transition from those two parts of each other. But I found my interest like slipping away a bit at times. And then last we have Kuang and H Mart by Michelle Zauner, which I gave out of 5 stars to. This is a memoir, and like I do want to say that when I'm rating on fiction book, it's 9 out of 10 it's just on the writing, because like I'm not gonna judge anyone's personal life. But I thought the writing this was great. It's beautiful. The way the author like describes things just immediately like puts you in it. Like that's why I think this book is so popular, because the writing is just so impactful and makes everything stay with you so well. The reason it just wasn't a 5-star for me is that I do feel like at times I got a bit lost in a way. Like at moments it was so strong, but at other times I kind of got a bit lost in the words, if that makes sense. That was everything I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye!